with that, welcome you inside this week-ending edition of Big Ten Today, presented by Gatorade. Rick Pizzo, Dave Wanstead here in studio. Dave, I know a lot of folks say that Christmas is the happiest time of the year. For me, we've arrived at the best time on the calendar. We're getting ready to trim those turkeys, and we have college football games that matter oh so much this weekend and next.
Absolutely. No, and you know what? I'm thankful that I got good health. The family's got good health, that I can be here and be part of it, really.
We're all thankful that you're sitting next to us. We're also thankful to have a third member of our team, as Ross Dellinger joins us as he does each and every week, one of the busiest men in all of sports, covering on and off the field situations. Ross, I hope you get some time over the next couple of weekends to just sit down on the couch and watch ball.
I will try, and I'll have some turkey, and I'll maybe even have a little dressing and a little cranberry. And, Coach, at the end of the night, have a little bourbon, too.
Oh, you see, now Ross is touching all the bases.
That's right.
Every single one of them.
That's in my wheelhouse right there.
Let us dive into the show with the big story. It is the biggest matchup, not just in the conference, but in the nation. It's USC, Oregon in Eugene, 11th ranked matchup in series history. They have split those previous 10. Oregon has won 5 of the last 6 inside Autzen against AP-ranked opponents. Of course, the only loss coming earlier this year against Indiana. USC has not fared well in these kind of road matchups. Actually haven't won a top 10 road game since 2016, though not many teams can lay claim to winning road games against top 10 opposition. And this is going to be, Ross, without question, a big ask for USC. Trojans have answered those questions, especially last week in nasty conditions, perfect Iowa weather. They find a way, and there's no question. We know what's at stake here. If USC wins this game, it's their best win of the year. If they back it up next week against UCLA, I would argue the Trojans, if not guaranteed to be in, have a terrific shot to get inside that top 12.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be one of the better wins in the country, at Oregon. I think we've seen Indiana, right, do that, and it's arguable the best win in the country that Indiana has at Oregon. So I think this would be huge for USC. The stakes are high, right? About as high as they can get. When they expanded the college football playoff, guys, the entire point was to bring more teams into the fold and have more pivotal November matchups. And here we are. This is a perfect example of a game in a 14 playoff era that would mostly be insignificant, right, in the old 14 playoff. And now you have a USC team that, with a win, could either knock out the Ducks from the playoff, or they both potentially get in if they win their last regular season game and are at 10-2. So that all those things are a possibility. Kind of depends on what other teams do. BYU, Utah, Vanderbilt, Alabama, Notre Dame. We'll have to see sort of how that falls out nationally. But USC wins. You can expect that in a tiebreaker scenario, with if the selection committee has a tiebreaker scenario with USC and Oregon on the bubble, both at 10-2, the Trojans get the nod, right? They run the head-to-head and at Eugene. So this is a huge one.
Yeah, no question. That has been, the committee has showed us with their rankings, they're valuing head-to-head. That's why this is so important. Ross does make a very good point. Even if Oregon loses this game, in no way, shape, or form have the Ducks been eliminated from the college football playoff conversation. They still have 2 losses. They have a really good game in that scenario next week against Washington to try to build that resume. But there would be some nerves when the CFP committee is putting together their final 12. Let's go on the field, Dave. When you think about this matchup and you think about how good USC's offense has been against an Oregon defense that is usually very snug and very tight, what are you going to be watching?
Yeah, you're right. USC top 5 offense, Oregon top 5 defense. I would start with both quarterbacks. I mean, I'll go back to the Penn State-Oregon game. One quarterback throws an interception at the end of the game, and Dante Moore does not, and Oregon wins the game. I mean, I think this game, We know that Jaden Maave,
Jaden Maave.
He's thrown a few interceptions lately, which it was not happening early in the year, but he's making plays with his feet more than he did in the beginning of the year. So that puts a little bit of stress on the defense that I think from the standpoint of, oh, wow, this guy is a real run-pass quarterback.
Well, and because Lincoln Riley has installed that, I think when this USC offense went up against some really good defenses, Lincoln thought to himself, everybody knows that Jaden can throw the ball. Everybody knows Makai Lemon is one of the best receivers in all of college football. How can I offset that? I think Coach Riley deserves a ton of credit. He's used Maava. He's used former walk-on running backs, and that's been a key to their offensive success.
Absolutely. And I think the big plays, when I look at USC, they are a big play offense, whether it's King running the ball, whether it's Lemon, the receiving game, Lane on the outside. Big plays is how they make their living from an offensive perspective. Well, on the other side, who's number one with giving up the least amount of big plays in all college football? It's Oregon. So, I mean, you've got some real best versus best scenarios. Quarterbacks, I think, big plays versus don't give up big plays. And then the line play. The offensive line. When we started the first week, we talked about USC in the preseason being a Joe Moore possible award winning with their offensive line. Well, now they're facing Oregon's defensive line with a couple guys inside there that could be high draft picks, right? So, I mean, this game could come down like they usually do to the trenches. And in my mind, Oregon's going to be ready to play this thing up there at home. USC's offensive line, that's who I'm putting the challenge on for this one. Because if they protect, they got a chance for big plays. If they protect, the quarterback has a chance to do his thing.
And now you didn't obviously talk much about the Oregon offense. They steamrolled a really good Minnesota defense. Prior to that, the win over Iowa. You say, well, you can't run in between the tackles against the Hawkeyes. That's all Oregon did. And then Dante Moore didn't play a great game, made an unbelievable throw during that 2-minute drill. So this should be absolutely fantastic. The most important game, one of the most important games anywhere in the nation all season long, arguably the biggest game for CFP implications, certainly late in the season here inside the Big Ten. So USC, Oregon in the college football playoff conversation. Michigan certainly still in the college football playoff conversation, and not just because they have the game next week. Michigan has won 4 games in a row. Now, the last 2 have been tighter than expected. That is absolutely fair because you have to remember they barely got past Purdue. They needed a last-second field goal last week to beat Northwestern, but they are winning. And, Ross, you've talked about some of the biggest wins in the country and how big the USC win would potentially be, one of the biggest in the nation, along with Indiana's at Oregon. If Michigan beats Ohio State, that's the biggest win in the country all year long. And it truly does open up the path for Michigan to make the college football playoff.
It does. It would certainly be there would be probably no argument with that, right? Ohio State's been so dominant all year. That beating Ohio State, even if it's at home, would I think qualify as probably the top win in the country. So if you factor that in, and they take care of business against Maryland, you would think that 10-2 Michigan would be in the college football playoff. They're back right now. They're at 18. They're pretty well back. But can they leap 8 spots? Because 10 is really the number. You got to get within the top 10. It's actually not the top 12 because the ACC champion will get an AQ and be the 11 seed probably. And then the group of 5 champion, the best group of 5 champion, will get an AQ and be the 12 seed. So you got to crack that top 10. And I think Michigan, I would think, would do it. It could cost another big team a spot. Kind of depends on how it goes. But I think the Wolverines have plenty to play for. And you wonder how the Terps are going to play this weekend. We saw a few weeks ago Wisconsin AD Chris McIntosh gave the nod for one more season, right, or for another season for Luke Fickell. And what did Wisconsin do? They came out, they broke a 6-game losing streak by beating Washington. Can the Terps do the same? We saw Mike Loxley get the vote of support for another year from Jim Smith, the athletic director at Maryland. And you just wonder if the Terps, who have lost 6 straight as well, just like that Wisconsin team, can come out. They've got a big future. They're really hopeful with the quarterback, Malik Washington. And they're playing a Michigan team, let's be honest, that coach for the last 2 outings have struggled. They barely survived against Purdue and Northwestern. They've made a lot of mistakes in those games. And you wonder if the Terps have any kind of shot here to maybe pull the upset and cost Michigan a potential playoff spot.
Yeah, if they don't, by the way, just want to clear one thing up. If they don't and then Michigan beats Ohio State, you're also in a situation where the Wolverines could play themselves not just into the college football playoff conversation, but into the Big Ten title game. Because remember, one of Michigan's losses right now of their two is a non-conference loss to Oklahoma. So they only have one conference loss. If they beat Ohio State has a conference loss. So even if you want to pencil Indiana into the title game, then you potentially have the head-to-head with Michigan, Ohio State, and that would go to Michigan. Or you have the three-way with USC, Michigan, Ohio State. You could also throw Oregon in that mix. So it's not just about the college football playoff. It's also about the Big Ten title game. But we're not worried about the Ohio State game yet, right? If you're Sharon Moore.
I forget what I was going to talk about.
If you're Sharon Moore. Well, let me help you out. You were going to talk about the Michigan-Maryland matchup and the Wolverines needing to be on task because you think this is a sneaky, dangerous game in College Park.
I do. I would call this a trap game for Michigan, and I think Ross alluded to it that I think that this Maryland football team, keep in mind, they got as many freshmen playing for them, starting for them, as any team in the Big Ten. And these kids rally around their coach. And with Mike Locksley coming back, I see a renewed energy in this thing. And I'll tell you what, we talked about how Michigan was behind and had to take it to the fourth quarter. This is not a game in Maryland that you want to take to the fourth quarter. I mean, Maryland can score points. I mean, the biggest thing Maryland's got to do is they've got to be balanced. And you may not hit those 10-yard runs, but I would tell Coach Locksley, keep running for two and set up some play-action pass. Get your quarterback. Get Malik Washington running the football more. Do whatever you got to do to win this game because, right now, Michigan, let's talk about them. Thank God for their defense. 5 turnovers, and it comes down to a field goal. How does that happen? That should have been a blowout. It really should have been. And it comes down to a walk-off field goal at the end against Northwestern. So, if I'm Michigan right now, how are we going to generate points? And I know that their running backs are banged up and hurt, so they're struggling a little bit there. It comes back to the quarterback. They've got to try to do something this week with Bryce Underwood to create some big plays in the passing game. Or I think this could be a trap game.
He was playing well last week, but you have to avoid those turnovers that gave Northwestern the chance to win. Of course, give Michigan credit. They're finding ways to win these games, even when, as Sharon Moore says, they have not played a clean 60 minutes of football. Saturday, a football tripleheader kicks off with Minnesota and Northwestern at Wrigley Field. Then Michigan looks to keep its playoff hopes alive against Maryland. Illinois battles Wisconsin under the lights at Camp Randall. It all starts with countdown to kickoff, 11:30 Eastern, 8:30 Pacific, only on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. David Braun, your thoughts, please.
I think this is a program that is, for years, has been respected. And people will acknowledge, gosh, you guys play hard and you guys do it the right way. And those are all things that we want to certainly continue. But I also want to be clear, that this program isn't here just to say, you know what, we're going to try our best and do it the right way and hope we can compete on Saturdays. No, we're showing up every single week with an expectation to get a win. Just want to be really clear that this isn't something like, new Big Ten and look at these 18 teams and good old Northwestern is, going to give it their best try. No, we're showing up with an expectation to win.
That was David Braun in the aftermath of the Michigan loss. I absolutely love those comments. It's Minnesota this weekend, Ross, as they go for a second straight weekend inside Wrigley Field. And with Illinois looming next week and Northwestern still stuck at 5 wins, it feels like this is the Wildcats' best chance to get to 6 and lock up that bowl eligibility.
Yeah, they need to have this one, right? They're at home against a Minnesota team that has been exploited a little bit this year. I think that this gives them the best chance to get to that bowl eligibility mark, which is, look, that's a big deal. I don't know that anybody entering this season would have expected Northwestern to be 5-5 right now and to have 3 Big Ten wins. I think that a lot of the projections were much worse than that. So David Braun's done an incredible job there. If you think about the process of how he sort of took over and what's this been like and historically at Northwestern and all this stuff, this new era we're in with NIL and athlete compensation. And he's done an incredible job there despite having some disadvantages. The stadium, right? They're doing all the renovations to the stadium and playing in a temporary structure. This game is going to be interesting, Coach, because I noticed the over-under from Las Vegas is 40 points. So that tells you a lot that we're going to have some low-scoring ball, probably solid defense. But even for those two programs, that seems like a low number. It's sort of indicative of sort of a Big Ten November football, right? The Wildcats, like we talked about, still eligible for a bowl. And Minnesota, I'm sure wanting to get, as many wins as they can, a little bit of a disappointing season. And we've seen Minnesota really struggle offensively, 13, 23, and 3 points in their last 3 games. So can Northwestern sort of run the ball enough against a good Minnesota defense and hold the Gophers to, under 10, 15 points? It's been proven that, teams can do that.
Yeah, what's important talking about is right where it's at. If you're Northwestern, and David Braun, I love what he said. I'm thinking of this thing, and yes, turnovers are a big part of the football. We know that, critical part, but you can't count on them. I mean, and if you're a defensive player and you get 5 turnovers and lose the game, you're really scratching your head, a little bit. So this is a week where Northwestern, in my mind, they need to generate some offense and some points. I mean, they need to show their football team and their defense that we can take the ball down the field and put it in the end zone. I think that would do wonders for the mindset of this defense and this team. They need to show everybody that they can do that. And it's going to be tough because I think the strength of Minnesota's team, and has been from the opening week, is their front 7. I mean, I love Minnesota's defensive line and their linebackers. They come downhill. They're aggressive. So this is not going to be easy. I think you're going into the strength of this defense, which is their front 7. And, and PJ obviously is going to remain balanced. I mean, he's aware of these turnovers. Don't get distracted, PJ. You're going to Wrigley Field. Don't be talking about Willie Banks and the Ivy and get distracted. Keep your mind on this football game. We're not talking about Wrigley Field. That can be a little bit of a distraction. Ernie Banks.
Did you prefer Willie Banks or Ernie Banks?
Ernie Banks, Coach.
You're a football analyst. That's what happens when you start to talk about baseball.
I was thinking of that darn quote that everybody's using, good, better, best.
Minnesota, Northwestern, noon Eastern, 11 local time, right here on the Big Ten Network. I promise I'm going to get through this segment. Nebraska, Penn State, another game that is so entertaining. So many storylines here, right? Ross, you have backup quarterbacks for both teams. You have Matt Rule returning to Penn State. You have Terry Smith trying to put his best foot forward and become the permanent coach. You have Penn State left for dead, still with a chance to play in the postseason. You could go on and on. You could write a novel with all these storylines.
There are a lot of connections here, but man, before the season, right, this game seemed like it was going to be huge, right? Playoff implication type game, 2 maybe top 10, top 15 type of teams. And now we're at a point where you've got a matchup of teams that combine for 9 losses, right? They're sort of limping along. Injuries have been an issue. You mentioned it about Penn State losing their quarterback, Drew Aller, and the Huskers losing their quarterback, Dylan Raiola. So you got 2 players who entered the season with tons of hype, just like the teams, and things just haven't worked out. Another fascinating wrinkle in sort of an angle here, an off the field angle, is you've got Matt Rule at Nebraska. And he is very close friends with Penn State's athletic director, Pat Kraft. The two are close enough that I think Nebraska hurried to give Matt Rule an extension last month while Penn State's looking for a new coach. Maybe thought that Pat Kraft would come and knock on Matt Rule's door. So you got sort of that dynamic playing out as Penn State still doesn't have a football coach right now, right? They're in the middle of a search. They were flying around, I think, interviewing candidates earlier this week. So you've got that dynamic coach also playing out off the field.
Yeah, we're looking at 2 quarterbacks that were not the starters at the beginning of the year, right? 1 for each team. And that's going to make it a little bit different from the standpoint of just the chemistry of things working together in a game like this. I want to give Terry Smith, the interim coach at Penn State, some credit. I'll tell you what, to have those guys come out there, guys that are going to be in the NFL, Allen and Singleton, to come out and play like they played last week. I mean, those guys were getting after it. I was impressed. And I kept saying to myself, you know what, these guys, this game means something. I mean, you could see the intensity and the energy that they had. And I'm going to put that back on Terry. Now, they're going to need it this week.
Because you were concerned about that when they made the change and they were stuck in that losing
NFL guys, how excited are they about going to a bowl game? They're probably not going to play in it anyway. You know what I mean? But they went out and laid it on the line last week, and they're going to have to do that this week. To strengthen Nebraska, we know, obviously with the new quarterback, it's going to be Emmett Johnson, the running back, right? He's about 65% of that offense. And Matt Rule's going to run that ball, and you cannot play great defense unless you are emotionally all in. And I'm talking about Penn State. Yep. We saw them when they weren't all in against Northwestern. And Northwestern ran the ball. Other teams have. So that's the challenge. Can we muster up the type of mindset and effort for Penn State on defense to match up and take care of the running game in Nebraska? That's what this game's coming down to.
I do quickly with you want to get to Rutgers and Ohio State. Ryan Day is going to join us in just a minute. This is a connection game as well, right? Greg Schiano spent a bunch of time on Urban Meyer's staff. He and the current staff know each other very well. Rutgers is not where they want to be, but they have a chance to get to a bowl game. Trouble is, they're playing the most complete team in the country.
Yeah, this would make, obviously, their whole season. We all know that. I've been in this situation where Matt Patricia, the defensive coordinator, Ohio State, where he is. This is a nightmare game because of this. Rutgers, you got to assume every fourth down, Rick, that they're going to take a chance and go for some crazy special team thing.
Why wouldn't you?
Go for it. They got nothing to lose, and they're trying to hold on to the football. They don't want Ohio State to get that ball. So when you're Matt Patricia, a normal first, second, third down call, then they're punting, kicking a field goal, or whatever they're doing. That's the mindset that you've been working. Now it's first, second, third, fourth down, which throws everything off from a play calling standpoint.
And, of course, from a player perspective, got to keep the minds right with Michigan looming next week for the Buckeyes. We could not be any more excited. Your daily Gatorade Big Stat. Take a look at just how big a role Ohio State has played atop the CFP rankings. Buckeyes yet to vacate the #1 spot this season, thanks to an offense led by 2 Heisman candidates and a defense that isn't just leading the nation in points per game allowed, it's lapping the field, allowing 4 fewer points per contest than the next best unit on that list. Time for the big interview. Thrilled to be joined by Ohio State head coach Ryan Day, getting ready for Rutgers this weekend. Coach, first and foremost, thanks for joining us. I'd like to start with that defense because the numbers have been absolutely off the chart. I know that you were aware how good the roster was coming back, but you lost some talented guys as well. Has this defense and what it's done to this point actually even exceeded your own expectations?
Well, you try not to have too many expectations in terms of production, other than the fact that we need to get better every week. And I think that the way that these guys have played from week 1 to now has led them to play their best football here down the stretch in November, and that's really what it's all about. And I think it started with a group of guys who really embraced what Matt Patricia wanted to do. And that includes the players on the field and the coaches that were currently here. And, when you look at Caleb Downs and Sonny Styles and Caden Curry and Lorenzo Styles, I mean, these guys really embraced it and have taken it and run. And they really have a business-like approach to them and how they've done things. And the defensive line with Caden McDonald and KJ Jackson, these guys really are enjoying themselves when they play. But there's just a certain look in their eye when they come into the building, and they're trying to maximize each day, and then obviously Saturday's feedback on how they do, and they know the challenges that are ahead, and we got to be playing our best football this time of year. So in terms of expectations, we still got a lot of football to play, so we'll figure that out when it's all said and done.
Hey, Coach, 14 players drafted last year. I mean, nobody had more than that. I mean, that's incredible. And here you sit, obviously, with on offense. You know, depending obviously what Tate and Smith do this week, you could be starting a freshman quarterback, running back, and 2 receivers, not to count anybody else in the offensive line or tight ends. My question is, what's your formula for developing these players? And I know, guys, it's more than just having guys that run fast. You know, obviously, it's a big step. High school to college, you've got to make adjustments, coverages. I mean, at the skill position, there's a lot that goes into it. How do you get that done? How have you got that done? It's remarkable.
Well, it starts in recruiting and setting a certain mindset. You know, there's a lot of great schools out there. And it's been great to go through the process, even with my son, of visiting other schools and just seeing what's out there and the different coaches. I mean, there's great programs out there. But, you know, for us at Ohio State, you know, we make sure that, you know, when a recruit comes here, he understands what the expectation is. Like if you're coming here to play. If you fail, we fail. And the expectation is that we're not allowed to have a bad day and we win every game, and that you're coming in to be a first-round draft pick. And if that's not your expectation, you probably should go somewhere else. And you know, when you have that mindset and mentality when you first come in, you just, to me, you know, it's the way you start. And then you have to surround them with great people, you know, and Mick Marotti and what he does in our strength and conditioning, and then our staff, which I believe is the best in the country, and everything else that comes with it. You know, and then you surround them with players in a locker room with that same type of mindset, maybe from a different background. But all of those things come into play, that every day they're getting challenged. And it's not easy here. You know, when you come out to practice, I mean, there's paint chips flying everywhere and there's nowhere to hide. And either you want that or you don't want that. And to me, you know, when you have the confidence to run a route against Caleb Downs or go block KJ Jackson or go tackle Bo Jackson in practice, then when you go against, you know, our opponents, you should feel confident knowing that, you know, you're going against the best players in the country every day. And so that's how you build confidence, and that's how we develop here at Ohio State.
Yeah. Last year, your theme, I remember doing a show here, week 1, you talked about toughness. We are going to be a physical, tough team, as tough as anybody in the country, and you backed that up all year long to the championship. What's the theme this year? Did you come in with something different? Okay, with this team, different people, you know, obviously we talked about the young kids. What's the theme of your football team this year, really?
Yeah, well, it didn't change in terms of, like, we say we want to be the hardest playing team in the country. And part of that means just flat out effort. Like when you put on our film, you should just see ridiculous effort. A bunch of guys flying to the ball for each other, celebrating with each other. But then, like you said, the physicality. And that's the difference in the game of football than any other sport. The physicality. And you either want that or you don't. And you have to practice that way or you don't. You have to recruit guys like that or you don't. And the second thing is, you know, we want to grade out a champion, which means everyone has to do their job at a high level. So we work really hard at making sure that everyone's doing their job and grading out over 80%. And, you know, everybody on the team and every unit is doing their part. Then we're going to win every game on the schedule. And so, you know, it's not really flashy, but that's it. And the thing that was different to me this year is, you know, we read chop wood, carry water going into the season, because, you know, when you come off of a season like we did last year, it's just easy to say, well, let's just get back to the playoffs, you know, and talk about, you know, the end of the season, the rivalry game, the Big Ten championship, national championship. But it's the process that we have to master. It's not about the result. And so, you know, that was a message early in the season for our team, and it's not going to change. So, like, here we are, you know, week 11, and, you know, are we the best in the country from Sunday all the way to Saturday? And staying focused and not letting some of the distractions of, you know, what's coming towards the end of the season get in the way of what we want to do during the regular season. So those were some of the messages to our team, you know, overall. And then we always have our week-to-week messages that we try to make sure that everybody understands.
Ryan, I'm fascinated by lessons learned in 2024 that you guys have applied this year. We look at the stats and they tell us you're playing fewer plays, you're possessing the ball for a little bit longer. I'm curious as to how much of that was premeditated, despite the fact that obviously you have to adjust game by game, opponent by opponent. And has it gone the way that you want it to go as you prepare for what you hope is another long run into January?
Yeah, you looked at it last year and you saw sort of how things went. I think it was a combination of a lot of things. I think part of it was when it went to coach-to-player communication. You know, the huddle started becoming back into college football, and you know, there's no longer a reason to signal, because now we can communicate to the quarterback, And with the huddle, it's more efficient. It's it's a different way to learn. And so we did that because we did want to cut down on the number of plays, but we also wanted to do it because schematically, when you break the huddle and you shift and you motion, it's a lot harder for the defense to just call defense based on your formation. So that was it. But then what we found out over time was the guys really enjoyed being in the huddle. Everybody getting on the same page, calling multiple plays at the line of scrimmage, a couple tips that the quarterback can give to the O-line on a certain play. And then you start to learn it that way, and it becomes kind of how you operate. And so we think it's helped with our efficiency overall. But we still have the ability to go no huddle when we need to. But I think, like when you look at the NFL, there's a reason why every team in the NFL huddles. There's just really no tempo in the NFL. And so, I think it increases the overall efficiency of the team.
Hey, Coach, I'm a Naples, Florida resident, okay? And we used to see each other down there at the Ritz. And now there's no more Ritz. What have you've stepped up? You're spending your free time whenever you get any in the Carolinas, down there at the Montage. Naples wasn't good enough for you? What's
Blood's a little thicker than water, Coach. So I have to make sure that I'm with the family. Beautiful property. Naples is great, and I know you know that more than anybody, but got to go where the family is.
He's a smart guy. Not just a smart football coach.
I'm going to be down there this year. I'm going to I'm following Ryan's lead. Trust me, I'll be down there. I'll be down there with your Uncle John. Absolutely.
All right, Coach.
They got good golfing down there too, Coach.
Okay.
Coach, we love to get everybody out of here with a little game of 3 and out, 3 quick downs for you, and then a 4th down to get you out. Sometimes we take you a little bit off the field. You mentioned the age of your son. I know we kind of have similar age kids, and at one point we joked around about them learning how to drive. So, first down question, what was the harder handoff for you, the more stressful handoff? Handing off play calling duties to Brian Hartline or handing off control of the steering wheel to the first kid that wanted to drive?
Not even close. Driving. Yeah, man, oh man. It is like, once you have your child, they say nothing, all you do is worry from then on for the rest of their life. And little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems. And that's one that certainly we have on our phones, my wife and I, that 360 or whatever it is to make sure he gets there safely every time. And we're on him every day to slow down and drive safely.
Yeah, you just don't want that race car emoji on that Life 360 coming up. All right, second down, let's go back to your college days. I'm a Vermonter. You're a New Hampshire guy, and I know you played, obviously, at UNH. We have a lot of pride in Northern New England. You set 9 different program records there as a quarterback, and I'm sure you had some good receivers. Do you ever daydream how good your numbers would have been if you had guys like Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate to throw to?
No, we had some good receivers. It wasn't exactly Jeremiah and Carnell and the guys we've had, but that was a fun time to be a quarterback. That was really the beginning of the no huddle offense. And my first year, Chip would change the offense completely week after week. So we went from the triple option to the run and shoot to the veer option to the wing T one week down at South Florida. Like we would completely change our offense, and then after the first year, then it became really the no huddle, go try to run as many plays as possible. I think we were averaging close to 100 plays a game. And it was great for me because I got a chance to learn the game from one of the best minds ever. And I was very fortunate to have great coaches. And Chip was a big part of that. And so I'm very fortunate to have that experience.
I love it, bringing 100 plays a game from UNH all the way to Oregon and then to the NFL.
I'm thinking of trying to defend that every week.
Yeah, Dave's over here sweating already. All right, third down, Coach. I remember when you were clean shaven and then you went to the beard. It's worked out very well. Matt Patricia brings a fantastic beard. I've even seen my buddy Laurinaitis starting to grow it in, but his gets gray and he looks really old when he does it. Any competition amongst the staff as to who has the best beard mid-season?
Well, I would say that Patricia really, made it tough for a lot of us. He's got a pretty grizzly one, but he's cleaned his up. He looks sharp. He's at his fighting weight. And, no, the beards are hot right now here in Columbus, and this time of year, it's good. Gives us all an edge, and no, it's a good group of guys. I think when you look at this coaching staff, there's great chemistry right now. And I'm proud of that. You bring up a guy, James Laurinaitis. He's doing a great job with those linebackers, man. And he just loves being a Buckeye. And the same thing, like you said, with Brian, former players, Tim Walton. The list goes on. And I think that has a lot to do with your team, man. Staff chemistry. And so I don't know how many beards we have on the team, but I would say right now probably Matt's got the best one, and then there's an argument to be made for second and third.
See, playoff beards not for hockey alone. All right, Coach, 4th down, and then we officially get you out of here. It's a fitting question for this time of the year. What are you, whether it's as a dad, as a husband, as a football coach, as somebody who belongs to Ohio State, what are you most thankful for?
Well, boy, there's a lot to be thankful for, and I talk to our team a lot about, before games, when we pray and, we ask for things, we got to make sure on Sundays we're thanking and being grateful for everything that we have. It starts with our health. And, for me, it's my family and the support they have and some of the challenges that have come in their lives and our lives that have made us only stronger. But then to be at a place like Ohio State where we just have great people. Every day you walk in a building with great players, great coaches, and that's it. And every day is an opportunity to learn. And grateful to be in this position where we're at right now. Game 11 and everything out in front of us this season. But it's the daily lessons, the day-to-day stuff that goes on unnoticed to so many people in this building. But that's the job. The job is raising young men and having an impact on their lives. And this is a fun group to be around every day.
Really well said, Coach. Truly appreciate your time, and don't forget when you book those vacation reservations, you got to get an extra bed for Wani.
We'll get him.
I'm going to beat it. He's going to be working a lot more than I am. I'll be there first.
Awesome. Thanks, Coach.
Take care, guys.
In honor of Native American Heritage Month, the Big Ten Network spotlights legendary figures in the conference's rich history. Jabba Chamberlain, member of the Winnebago tribe of Nebraska, turned in one of the most dominant pitching performances in Husker history in 2005. In his inaugural season at Nebraska, he led the team in strikeouts with 130 en route to earning first-team All-Big 12 honors, as well as being tabbed the Big 12 Newcomer of the Year. He ended his sophomore season with 10 wins and a 2.81 ERA, leading Nebraska to the program's first College World Series win. Chamberlain was drafted by the New York Yankees in the first round of the 2006 MLB Draft. The Nebraska native worked his way through the minors, making his MLB debut in 2007. His professional career is highlighted by a 2009 World Series ring.
Nebraska volleyball team has already clinched a share of the Big Ten regular season title. Huskers doing so in fitting fashion Thursday with a home sweep of Iowa. Huskers now 27-0, 3 matches still remaining to clinch the title outright. That quest begins Saturday when Nebraska travels to Bloomington for a road date with number 17, Indiana. Speaking of Indiana, Ross Dellinger has the Hoosiers ahead of Ohio State as the number 1 team in his top 10 rankings. The rest of his top 10 fairly similar to the College Football Playoff Committee, with Oregon at number 7, but with the exception of USC inside Ross's top 10. As we welcome Ross back into the show, Ross, let's start with Indiana. Why for you the Hoosiers over the Buckeyes in that top spot?
Yeah, Rick, I've had Indiana up there for a while. I think ever since they won at Oregon, because I do think, and we talked earlier in the show about good wins, right, and the best wins in the country. I do think Indiana's win at Oregon is arguably the best in the country. Now, A&M won at Notre Dame, and Alabama won at Georgia. You can argue those victories are just as good, but I'm not sure they're better than the Hoosiers going on the road and winning in Eugene. Obviously the AP poll and most of the other polls, CFP poll, have Ohio State number 1. And look, we're splitting hairs here. The issue with Ohio State is that one victory. They don't necessarily have that one you circle. And remember, their best win maybe is against Texas at home, and a 14-7, sort of an ugly game. Texas has lost 3 other games since then, including a loss at a bad Florida team. So that win doesn't sort of look as well. So I just put Indiana, because of that Oregon win, up there. And look, they've been pretty dominant. They escaped out of Penn State with a game, I know. But other than that, it's been dominant performance out of dominant performance by the Hoosiers.
All right, Ross, I think the Big Ten feels very comfortable with saying 3 teams at minimum will get into the college football playoff. Let's talk about the path for 4. What to you is the more likely or more realistic path? Is it for USC and Oregon, regardless of this weekend's result. That would be most likely with a USC win. Both getting in with 2 losses, or is it more likely for one of those teams and Michigan to make it 4 Big Ten teams?
Yeah, you look at sort of the path here, and there are a couple of the Big Ten is a couple of upsets away from having a path to 4. You've got Indiana and Ohio State in, obviously, and then you're looking at, and you mentioned it, Rick, Oregon, USC, Michigan. You got 3 teams. Will all 3 get in? Very unlikely, right? That would be some crazy upsets, and you would need a lot of other stuff to happen in other leagues. But the big thing is, can you get 2 of those 3? And I definitely think it's possible for the Trojans. They have a shot this weekend to do it, right? They really need to beat Oregon this weekend. It paves the way for them to finish 10-2 with a win over UCLA next week, potentially. And the path is sort of clear for them to be on the bubble and get ahead of other bubble teams like Alabama and Notre Dame, maybe even in Oklahoma. There's a chance even they take Oregon's place. As I mentioned earlier in the show, they take Oregon's place in the field. Now let's look at Michigan, right? They have a shot too. They would probably, as we talked about earlier, have the best win in the country. Replacing Indiana's win at Oregon in a lot of Indiana's win at Oregon in a lot of ways if they beat Ohio State, right? So they beat Maryland this week. They win at Ohio State. They have the best win in the country. They're 18 right now. I think they do leap up and they get into that bubble mix, right? But first they got to take care of Maryland this week. Wolverines will be 10-2. Rick, it can be pretty crazy because you could have, if USC wins against Oregon and Michigan upsets Ohio State, right? You could have a bunch of teams at this 10-2 right on the bubble, right between ranked 8th and ranking 13. You could have all these 10-2 teams: Alabama, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, and then Michigan, USC, and Oregon. Good luck to the committee if that happens.
Yeah, both wanting. Our heads are spinning already, so hopefully we'll get to the College Football Playoff Committee's finally reveal on Sunday, and it will all make sense. It is time. Don't miss a pair of hoops matchups. First, number 17 Michigan State takes on Detroit Mercy. Then, number 19 UCLA hosts Presbyterian. Coverage begins at 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. Not sure if it's still their nickname. Presbyterian used to be the Blue Hose. Yeah, socks, blue socks, just in case you're curious. Illinois this weekend, clearly going to be favored up in Madison. Brett Bielema always tries to downplay right his return to Madison. Totally understand why. He shouldn't be downplaying the improvement of this defense, which was really struggling early in the year.
They were. I think ever since the Washington game, the last 2 or 3 weeks, they've really, just watching from afar, they've tightened things up. The old expression, less is more. It seems like they're doing a little bit less. You don't see the big plays that they gave up there early in the year in some situations. And I'll tell you what, when you're playing with some young guys and you simplify things a little bit, you play faster and you're going to be more effective. So that's going to be the challenge here because we all know that Wisconsin's playing with a freshman quarterback and they're kind of limited as far as the passing game. But one thing that we do know, we're talking Illinois' defense, Wisconsin's defense is going to show up.
Yep.
I mean,
they
will,
terrific.
Right? They will show up at home. It's going to be cold, maybe some snow flurries, all that. I mean, this could come down to a defensive game. So, one thing Illinois knows, that the Wisconsin will show up, and we're going to have to do a good job of getting the ball in the end zone.
Yeah, I like what OC Jeff Grimes is doing with Carter Smith.
Yeah.
Gives you a very different look if you're an opposing defense, can run some options, some stuff that you just don't see a lot today in college football. And finally, Ross, let's discuss Washington, UCLA, because I know a little bit of steam faded in Seattle with that loss to Wisconsin, and the playoff hopes kind of went to the side. But this Washington team still has a chance to win 10 games this season.
10 games, and also think about it, both of these teams actually have a chance to play spoiler, right, next week. We talked about it earlier. If USC were to beat Oregon, they'd be in a prime position to make the playoff, and they play UCLA next week. So UCLA has a chance to play spoiler. Washington has a chance to play spoiler to Oregon next week. And so they want to keep the momentum going. Look, for the Huskies, Jonah Coleman, Damon Williams, should have a field day for UCLA, right? They're one of the worst defenses in the country, worst defense in the Big Ten. They're giving up 32 points a game, nearly 400 yards a game. So I think Washington has a chance to really run it up here and kind of have a field day against the Bruins D, Coach.
Should be interesting to see as well. Nico Iamaleava has been banged up for a couple of weeks. Tim Skipper kind of non-committal, understandably, saying you'll know when the injury report comes out. Right now, obviously, need to have a quarterback if you're going to try to keep pace with what Washington can do offensively. For Ross Dellinger and Dave Wanstead, I'm Rick Pizzo. As always, thanks for hanging with us on this edition of Big Ten Today.